And now, live from the studios of WHUC, this is Real Talk, where we get you something to talk about.
Good evening, and thank you for joining this edition of Real Talk. Today we have a very interesting guest. He is a former Hines Community College graduate from this department. He went on to Texas State University to receive his master's degree this past Friday. But what makes him interesting is that he wasn't always on this path of education. He went down a path that most people don't come back from. Here to talk about that today is Jarvis Jones. Please give him a warm welcome. All right, now, Mr. Jones, this past month has been 15 years since you've been arrested for armed robbery. Can you kind of like give me kind of the significance behind that, how you feel right now?
Oh man, it's really like a dream. It doesn't seem real. You know, I have to sit back and reflect because a lot of times I don't even realize how far I've come. Like actually the magnitude of what I actually did as far as the robbery is concerned, to just get me to a place now where I can get out and, you know, go to school, receive an associate's, a bachelor's, went on to get my master's. So man, it's really a surreal feeling right now.
Yes, sir, I completely understand that. Now, can you kind of elaborate, leading up to the armed robbery, can you explain some influences and people that really got involved in putting you in that type of situation?
Cool. You know, man, being young and you grow up in an environment that's not just necessarily conducive to growing, right? When you grow up and you witness people getting killed, right? You witness people robbing, you growing up in poverty. So your mind and mentality is shaped in such a way that you don't even see past your current circumstances, right? So I can remember, and I always tell people, man, we only had 3 options, right? You're gonna only play sports, sell drugs, try to rap, right? But that wasn't reality, but that's all I thought, because when you cut that TV on, you see a ball player, right? You cut the TV on, you see the American gangsters. You cut that TV on, you see the rappers, and you say, well, man, like that's what I'm gonna do, right? And sometimes it leads to other paths like the ones I did, which led me to robbing. So it's like, and it's not an excuse, it's more so of an explanation, because a lot of people think that because you come from a certain background or you come from a certain environment that you have to go on this same path. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Unfortunately, I found out the hard way, but I'm glad I did eventually learn that where you come from doesn't mean that's what you're going to be.
I agree with that completely. Now, when you were in that courtroom and you heard Jarvis Jones, I hereby sentence you to 15 years in prison. Can you kind of explain what was going on in your head, how you was feeling?
Ooh, man, my heart dropped. Like, granted, I knew that I was getting that 15-year sentence, but when you hear those words actually ring out like Jarvis Jones, we hereby sentence you to 15 years for simple armed robbery, like that's a total different feeling. Like I knew that I was getting it, but it's like, it's real now. It's like, it ain't no crying and saying, mama. It's no crying saying, daddy. It's no crying saying, can you help me, right? Because I had made my bed. But at 16 years old, I didn't understand the consequences of my behaviors. And when they said that 15, man, I went back to that kid that I always was, right? A lot of times you got people that go out and they commit crimes and they do things as teenagers and adolescents. And when it's time for punishment, now they have to revert back to that baby, or they revert back to the kid that they always were. And so that's what happened to me in my mind. I'm like, man, I'm that child, but on the outside, I had to keep a composed face. I couldn't show that, man, I was afraid. I couldn't come into tears, right? Because I had to maintain that persona or that image of what a man was supposed to be.
Yes, sir. I wouldn't be able to do what you did, honestly. I think I would have broke down crying. That's something tough, and not a lot of people can walk away from that.
True. You know, I had my very first night in jail, man. I told myself, I said, it's time to get your tears out. So my very first night that I spent in jail, I slept on the side by myself, and I cried for the bulk of the night. And when I woke up that next morning, I said, okay, now you got all your tears out, because this ain't no place for you to just be walking around here crying. So now that I got all the tears removed away from my system, right, it's time for me to just go ahead and do what I got to do. And I made a promise to myself. I said, listen, the same way you came in It's the same way I want you to come out. And the physical aspects, meaning I didn't come in with any stab marks. I didn't come in with a broken bones, right? So I told myself I got to come back out like that. And so I had to do what I had to do in order to survive and make sure that I could come back out like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, we're going to take a short break and we can go into a little bit deeper details on the prison right after these messages.
Real Talk will be right back after this. When stories hit home, you can trust the WHUC News 17 to give you the information you need.
Here's the photos, Thursday, August 19th.
If it's Hines Community College news around the campuses.
And this is only the beginning. We have a full week of activity.
Weather.
And now in Crystal Springs, but as you can see,
Sports.
Hines is ready to get back to usual by starting the semester off with sports.
And more. We are WHUC News 7, Hines' only college news station that cares. And now, Real Talk continues.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Jarvis Jones. Now, we all know that African Americans, they make up most of the population in the prison system. So can you kind of explain and describe the events in prison leading up to you wanting to beat the odds and change your life forever?
So beating the odds, man, it's like you get in a situation and you looking around, everybody's, like you said, predominantly African Americans. And it's like, dang, you hear about the stories of the people that's coming in and coming out. And you just gotta have a hard conversation with yourself. Like, what is it that I want for my life? What is it that I need to do to get what I want for my life? And you have those hard conversations, man. And it's like, hey, I was a pretty average student in school. I could have done better if I had applied myself. But I was like, man, being in prison, dealing with the inhumane treatment, guards talk to you in a type of way, right? A lot of times I kind of use the analogy of being in a jungle, because that's literally what it felt like when I was in prison. You think about the jungle, you think about the toughest animals, you think about the lions, the tigers, the bears, the boa restrictors, you think about all of that. And that's literally what you are dealing with, right? You got 60 people on one zone when I was a juvenile, right? And everybody had this mentality like, man, I don't want to get got. So a lot of people overcompensate in their behaviors. A lot of people do things, right? So other people won't try them. So you got a lot of people playing a tough role, right? And so I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to play somebody that I wasn't. I came in there as myself. I didn't try to be tough. I didn't want to go up there and try to stab nobody, anything like that. But I knew I had to protect myself, for one. And for two, I knew I needed to do better things. So, I wanted to get my GED. Took my GED, passed that in like 3 months, and I went on and take my test for the ACT because while in prison, I picked up a book. It was a psychology book. And I got really, really interested in it. And I said, you know what? It'll be pretty cool one day if they call me Dr. Jones. Granted, I'm 2/3 to that process already, so I just got my master's, so I'm 2/3 through that. But I said all that to say, it's like I found a purpose. I found something that I really, really wanted to do for myself. And I just kept on that pace, man. And, it's been nonstop ever since.
Well, I'm glad you made the decision while you was in prison. Now, Mr. Jones, even though prison was originally designed to rehabilitate and so people can be more productive in society again, a lot of people don't really expect people to find success when they come out. After being in prison for 7 years, how do you find the motivation and focus to go back to school and continue that route to where you are now?
It goes back to that book. It goes back to that psychology book. And then I don't like lying to myself. You can sit there and lie to people all day, but when you lie to yourself, it hits different, right? So it's like I told myself, I don't know if it was 2008, 2009, or whatever the year was, but when I picked that book up, and I became intrigued, and I started to read, and I started like, oh, okay, this is pretty good. You know what? I like this. I like to read. And I was like, you know what? Let's go after this. So that's why I made that first step to take the ACT while I was in prison, right? And it's like, hey, just keep moving. And I kept moving forward, and I got the associates. I was like, okay, that's one down. I'm not satisfied because that's not what I said I wanted to do. that was a stepping stone. So I went back, I got that bachelor's. I was like, ooh, okay. But I still wasn't satisfied because I set a goal out, and the goal said, Dr. Jarvis Jones. I cannot become a doctor with a bachelor's, associate's, or a master. So the goal was the bachelor's, and also me being true to who I am. I said I wanted to do this, so I have to do it.
Well, that's great, man. Finding that motivation in prison is wonderful, and look where you are now. Something different than most people didn't think you were going to be. Now, we're going to take another break. We'll be right back with more Real Talk.
Real Talk will be right back after this. For more than 4 decades, you have trusted us to be the #1 college news source that cares for you from the beginning to the end. So now, we're proud to say that we've won the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters Awards. And we will continue to try to keep you knowledgeable and focused on stories that are happening around you. We are Hines' very own WHUC News 7, named #1 by the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters. And now, Real Talk continues.
Welcome back to this edition of Real Talk. If you're just now joining us, we're here with Jarvis Jones, a once incarcerated man, now a businessman with a master's degree. Now, Mr. Jones, you're now telling your story to the youth and allowing them to learn from your mistakes, and it's now a part of your life. Can you explain how important it is to share with the world what kind of impact you're hoping to have on the next generations to come?
Oh, definitely, man. Listen, you know what? It didn't even start with them though, you know. It kind of blossomed into that. Like when I first came home, right, I had this dream and this goal to become a doctor, right? But along that journey, I started to like talk to kids that I was around while on this campus. While I was in prison, I was talking to kids. I didn't take it as far as something like, okay, this is gonna be a career professional or anything of that nature. But it's like the more I talk, the more I understand and realize that kids are not bad. A lot of times they're misguided and they don't have people in their lives to, you know, kind of help them out with making great decisions or good decisions. A lot of them are followers, right? And it's okay to follow as long as you're following the right people. And a lot of times we get caught up in this facade that you have to be a certain way to be liked or be accepted. And that kind of goes back into what I do as far as what I got my degree in is clinical mental health counseling. So you get to talk to kids and you realize they have a lot of needs that go unmet. And when you have needs that go unmet, you do what you can to meet those needs, whether they're good or bad, right? Prime example, you got kids that think it's cool to go to school and, you know, be disrespectful towards teachers, right? But a teacher may look at it like, oh, this is just a bad, disruptive, you know, kid that don't want nothing out of life. But I would look at that situation from a different perspective. I would ask myself like, okay, what is he trying to tell me? What is he presenting me? Okay, he's presenting to me that he's being disruptive. Why are you being disruptive, right? So you got to explore that. So it's obviously there's something that's going wrong he needs met, but he doesn't have the language to articulate what it is that he needs to be met.
Sir, can you kind of say something specific that you usually tell youth whenever you speak to them, or something in your book that you like people to hear?
Okay. Truthfully, man, I just like to meet people where they are, man. I like to tell people, man, like, listen, where you are today doesn't have to be where you are tomorrow, right? Meaning, if you come from an environment where you just say, let's just say, for instance, man, you're a single parent household, you grow up in the hood, you don't see much, you don't have much, you don't get to experience much, right? That doesn't have to be your reality, right? You can go on and you can create what you want to be, right? Someone said it best. The best way to predict your future is to create it. That's the best way. You got to create it. So no matter what people tell you, right? I was having a conversation with a group of kids a few weeks ago. It's like, there's a narrative out there about you. You know, you're a black man, you're a thug, you this, you that. That's a narrative. It's a false narrative. And a lot of times we fall in that trap. And so if somebody tells you something enough, you start to believe it. And that's what happens a lot of times with our kids. They believe the lies that's been told to them. It's like, no, that's not true. I'm a living witness to that. Like, I went to jail. I did 7. I came back, got out, got into school, got me a job. I got my own company, right? Then I'm finna start be working in private practice doing counseling. So I created that. That's the point of it is I created what I wanted for myself, not what somebody told me that, yeah, you got a 66.7% chance of going back to jail within your first 3 years, right? Those are real numbers. That's what they told me. They had that for me. But it's like, nah, I ain't gonna listen to you because I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna do what I need to do.
That's wonderful, man. Very inspiring. Now, that concludes today's Real Talk. Special thanks to Jarvis Jones for being here today, and thank you for tuning in to watch and listen. Please like the video if you enjoyed today's show, and subscribe to see more content like this. Also visit the Facebook page and the link in the description. Again, thank you for joining. We'll see you next time here at Real Talk.